Hi everyone and welcome to Perfect Poppies. So this particular painting is a mixture of acrylic and oils. You can do the whole thing in oils, but you would have to do it in 2 steps, maybe over the space of 2 weeks. So we're going to paint in the whole of the background, then we're going to paint the poppies. So if you're doing it in one sitting, we're going to go with acrylics first of all. We're going to actually start off. You might find this easier to turn it upside down to do. We're going to start off with the white and then gradually add some black until we get to pure black at the top. The reason we want to start with white is because we want to keep a bit of purity to the colour, and if we start off with black and just keep adding white, the likelihood is we wouldn't get to grey by the, we would still be grey by the time we got to the bottom. Just one thing to keep in mind with our acrylic paint is that grey always dries darker than it appears when it's wet. So if at all you're at all worried about it, err on the paler side. You can always kind of go back and rework some of this anyway. So I'm going to give myself a nice generous portion of white. She says that using the very last bits of her white acrylic paint. So, and I'm going to put out a little bit of black while I'm here as well. I'm going to use I've just got a 1-inch flat brush, and it's totally up to you how you want to interpret this. Because our poppies are very painty effect, I had a very roughly painted paint effect on my background, and also just so you can see, I've painted round onto the sides of the stretch canvas as well. So it's just, that's very much a personal preference to have like, you know, the painting round rather than the canvas showing around the outside. So I'm going to take some of my water and I'm going to start, at the top with just my pure white, and then I'm going to turn this canvas the other way up when I'm done. So we do need to work a little bit quickly on this one, just because we do want a little bit of blending going on. So obviously this is not showing up at all on screen because I'm painting white onto white. I'm going to get some nice quick brush strokes, and then I'm going to take just the tiniest amount of black, start to add it, give myself a nice kind of dove grey. Need to add a little bit more water to it, and I'm going to paint down the sides first and then start to kind of bring this in. I'm going to leave it so that the brush strokes show, and then I'm just going to keep doing that. So same as we quite often do, add a bit more black, add a little bit more water. Just, you don't want to go sort of transition between the shades too quickly. And also we don't want to paint too sort of thickly. So what I'm doing is once I've got the paint on, I'm just rubbing in one direction upwards so that I don't I leave those brush marks and streaks on there. And I'm just going to keep doing that now. What you might find just for the very last bit is that you want to just go straight for black. If you find that you kind of you're still picking up bits of grey from earlier on. So the other thing, so what will help you as well is obviously we've got our black area down there, or if you're working on the canvas, and you need to have your canvas sitting on something. So, well, I do anyway. If you're working on an easel, you can always then just paint. If you've gone to pure black at that bottom bit, you can always just go over the pure black edges and stuff with your paint straight out of the tube. You don't have to worry about trying to match it or anything like that. So I'm starting to get a little bit of a contrast now. So I've given myself quite a bigger bit of black for this next one, because I do need to start getting a bit of a move on with this really. So actually get this transitioning a bit more. You can see I've got these nice brush strokes happening. It's up to you. If you want to have more of a kind of smooth transition, then use your brush strokes going horizontally as well as vertically. And that will give you, this looks a lot more contrasty on screen than it is in real life. If you've kind of gone a bit too harsh, you can always grab yourself a bit more white and take some of that through. So. It doesn't really sort of matter. You just want it to sort of echo what's going to be happening with the oils. I'm going to wipe my brush out now and just go straight to black. So I'm just going to get some solid black in this band here. I'm going to come back and do the edges of my canvas with the sort of flat back black colour once I turn the once the sort of background's dry and everything, and then I'm just going to work some of this up into the grey. So if you've pulled loads of your grey down, just go back over with your brush, a little bit more black, and then you can work it that way. If you're like working like me on an easel, when the top of your canvas is dry, you can very carefully turn it over. So with acrylics, you can always use a hairdryer to dry it off quicker if you need to, unlike oils where you're stuck with waiting for them to dry in their own time. Everyone getting on okay?
Sorry, I'm saying yeah, but it's on mute.
Oh, Nikki, from what I can see, that looks really good.
I was just wondering if it was too black at the top.
No, do you know what? That is jet black up there. And actually it gives you a really lovely contrast against the red. So it's definitely like the contrast really adds to the kind of dynamicness of oh, is someone just joining now? Okay. Let me Hi, we're already about 26 minutes into this session. Huh? Oh, no, gone. Okay. So yeah, obviously we need to kind of get this to dry off, and what I am going to do is I'm going to just mute myself. I'm going to use a hairdryer just to dry this off, so that then I can demonstrate the next step for you guys. You don't have to do that. You'll probably find that by the time I've gone through everything, yours will be dried off anyway. Okay. So once our background is all dry, and you know, we want this to be kind of rough and sketchy and scratchy and everything, honestly you really won't see these very much sort of once you've got your poppies, because they're so bright and so vibrant and so big as well. We're going for big and bold. we're going for confident strokes. And, you know, part of the thing with this is the texture of the oil paint and the streaks of the brush strokes will give the effect of the texture of the poppies, that sort of ruffly effect. That's what we're looking for. So I'm going to take, so this next step is up to you whether you want to do this with some thinned down oils, or whether you want to use a little bit of red acrylic that you've watered down. But we're going to kind of sketch in a very rough plan of what we want. I'm going to do it in red. And the reason we're going to do this in red is because actually the whole thing is very sketchy and textural and rough. And if we paint a line and we go wrong, if you paint, well, you can leave it now. You don't have to go over it. It can become part of the painting. So I'm just going to use a bit of red. So I'm going to start off with this poppy up here, mainly because it's the most simple one out of all of them, and it just gives us a bit of a chance to kind of have a little almost practice run. So if we look at our poppy, we've got this kind of point where the stem is, and we want our stem to ever so slightly curve in. So we're aiming from this corner here kind of to come then down the middle. So sometimes it does help if you wanted to and had a pencil, you could give yourself a little kind of guideline of where your stem's going to be. I'm going to come in, I'm going to put my first stem like there, and then I'm going to work, and you can actually, which will quite often with things like oil painting, you paint in the opposing colour on the colour wheel underneath that picture, and then you leave little bits of it showing, and it will make your colour even more vibrant. So if you want to paint in your stems with your red now, if you're doing it just like a little faint line, it's a really good kind of way. So if anyone did the bluebird with me, no, not bluebird, blue tip with me, and we painted it all with red guidelines first of all, and then painted everything over the top, and you just had little tiny sneaks of the red showing through, and it just brought out a real vibrancy to all the other colours and the way they reacted. So that's something that we can do here. So the other good thing about painting now guidelines in red is that we can paint, for example, this whole stem in, and then paint our poppy over the top. Our next sort of our guideline for that poppy, we can paint it over the top and it will just disappear. So right, so I've got this nice kind of curved line, and then my next poppy is going to go up towards that top right hand corner. You can do this.
Tony,
Yeah.
Which brush are you using, like a point, like relatively small brush?
Yeah, so I am using, I've got a round, and it doesn't say on it what it is. I would, yes, probably about a number 3.
Okay.
So,
and which red?
This is, I'm using acrylic. It's just a deep red.
Deep red.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But any shade of red will do for this. So I want my first poppy to be heading up towards this top right hand corner, and then from here I'm going to sketch in very roughly the shape of my first petal. And then from that, poppies, so we don't want to come, if you have a look at this one, we don't want to just come out, we want to come down and up, so that we've got that lovely, we're looking at it from underneath, we've got that lovely kind of fat bottom. So I'm really simplifying these shapes. I've not got these kind of fluted edges on the top or anything like that, the sort of scallops of the petals. And then I'm gonna come round. And I actually want that again to come out. So have a look at what you've done, whether you want to make any of these petals fatter, taller, anything like that. And you can pop those in now. Everyone okay so far? Yeah, cool. So really emphasize, I'm going to really emphasize this real kind of fat, wide shape at the bottom. Don't go sort of traditional, you know, kind of like up and narrow at the bottom and kind of getting taller. You want to really come out wide and downwards from your stem and get that kind of fat bulbous shape that the poppies have. Once you've done that, we can put in this next seed pod, and again this is going to tuck in behind this middle poppy. So by doing our guidelines in the red, we don't have to worry about kind of like having to paint over it later on. So that is, you could at this stage just put in the oval. So pop in something like that. You can go a bit higher if you want. I've probably gone a little bit low there compared to my original, but and then I can bring my stem down. Everyone doing okay? Yeah. Cool. Let me know when you've done that, and yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. Alessandra, you okay? Yeah, cool. So you guys all ready to go on to the next poppy? Yeah? Yeah, excellent. So this one we've got a bit more happening. It's not as open as the lower one, and but we're going to start to be able to see the center of our poppy. You're going to start to be able to see kind of some of the petals open. And what we want to look at now with this one is almost the direction it's heading is that way. So we're heading away, kind of over in that direction. Again, you might find that, or the easiest way of doing this is to give yourself a central point. So that would be our little kind of seed pod bit in the middle. Get that kind of roughly in, And then from that, work out where you want your stem to go. So these really are just really rough, kind of sketchy lines. Then go the other way with it, and that will give you the direction that your flower is kind of pointing. So, and then what you can do, you can either do this with your hand or with a second brush. You can work out roughly how big your petals are, and then you want to sort of repeat that. So that will give you a bit of a guide with your petals. So I'm just gonna very roughly start to put some petal shapes in. I know that I'm going to disappear off the edge of the canvas there. And then we have this kind of interesting one that's coming out towards us. So what I'm going to do is first of all paint in the underneath of my flower here, of that petal, and then I want to run just a very rough kind of line across. And then we've got our bit underneath that's going to be in shadow. Again, when you've got that kind of roughly sketched in, give me another thumbs up and I'll know we're ready to move on. Excellent. Cool. Excellent. So we're going to skip these 2 seed pods for the moment. We're going to just work out where we put this, and then those 2 seed pods will well, actually, whether you have 2 more that you add in, whether you only add 1 more in, whether where you place them will all depend now on your placement of this last poppy. So there's no point in us kind of trying to squeeze 2 pods in when actually just if 1 would look better. So yeah, we'll do that. So again, we're going to start with finding where the center point of our poppy is. We're going to pop in our stem, and then we'll start to put the details on. So what I want is this not to sit directly in line, sort of perfectly line up with this one that's above it. I want it to sort of be over slightly. So I don't want to go too close to the edge. So the center would be here. I'm going to move over to the right a little bit. So give myself the center. I'm then going to put in my stem like that. And then from here, again, I'm going to just work out roughly the scale. You can give yourself your direction line again. So I want my poppy to be, petal to be sort of there. This one we are going to have a bit more open. There'll be a bit more gaps in between our petals, showing some of the background, but you don't want to go sort of, you still want to keep the petals a similar kind of size between the 3 flowers. So pop in another one here. So not going to go too thin. I'm going to have this one that's coming across in front of us, like towards us. So I'm going to do this kind of a bit of a bowl shape here. So you have this kind of, well, actually, like it's like a bit of a very naive bird shape, really. With this is the tail going up to the body and over into its little kind of beaky shape. And then, so your other petals that you have, we've got this kind of, these two nice round lower ones. And then we've got this one. So basically it's like it's kind of got a bit of a fold or a ripple into it. So personally, what I would do is get the round ones in first. So making sure you kind of, if you're on one of the little narrow canvases, you're going to take your petals round the edge. If you're on a wider canvas, then you just really focus on keeping each of your petals roughly a similar kind of size from the middle, if that makes sense. And then, yeah, this last one, it's still, you know, the point is roughly the same distance from that center, but we're then just gonna kind of bring it in and down like that. So we'll obviously put more details in, and you'll find with these as you're working through it that they'll kind of start to get a bit of their own life, and you'll end up sort of tweaking them as you go. Then depending on what space you've left yourself, you can pop in where your other two, either two, other one, other three, if you feel that you need it. Again, I'm gonna mark out roughly the same kind of size. Sometimes if you carry the line through as well, that will help you with the direction that they're going, and you get those this one down here where they kind of bend, the weight of the seeds can sometimes bend them and things. So I'm gonna pop this one here. I want to make sure this is definitely a different angle to how the other ones are going. So I'm gonna put that up there and then bring in the bend and just pop in. There we go. Everyone okay? Yeah. Cool. Excellent. So if you want to, for this next, well, actually, I was saying that we're ready to start oil painting now. So if you guys want to get your oil paints out, I would say, if you are custom mixing your colours, be very generous with them, because you won't want to have to try and like match your colours. If you can help it, you'll end up sort of having a bit of a nightmare trying to rematch your colours. What we're going to do is basically we're going to start off with getting, when I say a thin layer, I'm not really going to water down the paint, dilute the paint much. We're just going to get a thin coat of our mid red on, and then we're going to start to build up. And this is really going to be about you being confident with your own ability and trying to do this in as few strokes as you can with as big a brush as you can, okay? Because that is what this is. You're going to be brave now. You're going to be brave and bold, and you're not going to fiddle too much. So I am going to start off. So I've got various, like a few different shades of red. I'm going to start off with a cadmium red, and I'm just going to use that. So I'm going to start off with just a brush to get this kind of in, and then once we start to really apply the paint thickly, you can switch over to a palette knife if you want. Or you can keep with the brush. Personally, I love painting with palette knives, but personally, I liked doing this one with a brush because you get the brush stroke lines in it that helps to create the lines of the that you want. If you are going to go with a palette knife, particularly around the kind of edges of the flowers, you want to go with a rounded edged top one rather than a pointed one. So and if you've got a filbert brush, then that is good as well, if not just a flat square. So I'm just going to get some of my, what did I say this was, cadmium red on, and I'm just going to start to, so you can see straight away the difference between the acrylic and the oils, and I'm going to just start.
I've got scarlet or vermilion. Shall I use scarlet?
Yeah, I'd go with scarlet. So I'm just going to get a thinnish coat on. I'm not going to worry too much if my edges aren't sharp. I'm going to start to get in some of these scallops. Oh, I haven't painted in oils for a while, so it's nice to get the smell. And what you'll find, the idea of this is to try and do it in as fewer brush strokes as you can, because particularly once we get down here to having to add some of our black, our paint is going to be still wet, so you're going to have to basically do that with as little movement or sort of fiddling with it as you possibly can. So I've got in my basic red, put it in. I'm going to just quickly stand up and have a look at this from a slightly different angle to make sure I'm happy with how this is going. I don't want it to look too much like a tulip. So, okay. And then I'm going to get out, so I can use, for my highlight colours, we want to avoid using white until kind of real, like at the very end. as a, you know, real highlights on edges where we really want them to come forward, and we don't want too much. We want depth in this particular one, but we don't want as much depth as we would be having on this one here. So we've got to think about the things like the warmth of the colour and things like that to do the job for us at this stage. So I have a Elysian crimson, which is also like a dark red. And I've also got, so you can use something like a Naples yellow, a cadmium yellow. If you've got a vermilion, you can use a bit of that. You want stuff that isn't too contrasty, but you want enough contrast that it will show up against the other colours. If you haven't got something like the Elysian crimson, grab yourself a little bit of something like an ultramarine. So if you've got something like that, you're basically, you know how when you try and mix a purple from red and blue and you get that funny dark sludgy colour, that's what we want. Okay, so we really want to avoid using a black if we can help, like black or white if we can help it. And then I'm going to start with the lighter colours, and the areas that we want to come out towards us, we're going to paint those in first. We've also got sort of shadows and things to keep in mind. So we're going to try and do this with as few strokes as possible, so that's not showing up on the screen. I'm going to grab a bit of my Naples yellow. Let's get a bit more contrast on here, see if this shows up. Yeah, that's a bit better. So can you see, if I just do a few strokes, you get that streakiness, which is kind of what we're after. So a little bit along that bottom bit there. And then if I just wipe out my brush and go in with my Elysian crimson, you should then be able to see more of the contrast. I'm going to try turning that down a bit better. Let's try turning that off. So I'm really trying to do this in as few strokes as I can. How's everyone getting on with that? Definitely silence there. It is a very different way of kind of painting, and you're not used to it. And if by nature you're someone who likes to sort of get loads of detail and tweak stuff, it's very different way of doing it. But you're loose, you just persevere with it and you'll find that you loosen up.
And are we still using the paint straight from the tube with no thinning?
Yeah.
Cool. It's so thick.
It is, yeah. But as you notice, as you kind of do your strokes, you're getting those lines in it,
Yeah.
and that gives you the petal effect.
Yeah.
So if you've got different shades of yellow and you've got sort of different shades of blue, it's a really good idea to sort of use lots of different things. Where you've got your red poppies, just sort of vary the shade up a bit. Don't kind of keep using the same way of lightening it or darkening it. And also, don't forget, if you get too much paint and it just gets to the point where you can't control it anymore, you can still use tonking to take off any excess paint. And you can also, you know, you're not stuck with the brushes that you've got here. So I'm using that same 1/2 inch brush, but I've then turned it on its side to give me for getting these lines down the bottom here. And I've taken, so what I'm doing is I'm getting a nice sharp edge on my brush. I've used the same brush for all of that and just wiped it out in between. And I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow, get a really sharp edge on my brush, and I can just take it along this little edge underneath and give it a little kind of highlight of kind of, you know, something going on with the light on that edge. Like that. You can do the same. So I'm just picking out little highlights in Naples yellow here. Naples yellow is just a very pale yellow colour, but it's quite good for adding sort of like warm highlights to things. And then you can just turn your brush on its side, and if you want to sort of edge some of your petals or put some more veins in or anything like that, you can do. I will say with this particular painting as well, this sort of an area like this will totally transform once you start to get a bit of green on there. So it will kind of change the whole dynamic. Leave it really painty and loose, and then that little bit of green will really kind of start to make it make sense.
Okay.
It was a balloon bursting.
Oh no, is that from your birthday?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh dear. Yes, I came down to find the living room filled with balloons.
Oh, lovely.
So, but honestly, I can't walk anywhere without like just balloons. So
Brilliant.
they're going to have to go very soon.
Sounds like they're making their own way out.
Yeah.
Is it your birthday?
It was last week.
Ah, happy birthday then.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my birthday on Friday. So, yeah.
Oh, so like double celebration, fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah, bonfire.
Yeah. So I got treated to a lovely weekend away.
Nice.
Well, it's funny. So I say a weekend away. We went to London for the weekend, but stayed in a hotel in London, which I'd never done because I was born and bred in London, and most of my life I've worked in central London, like really central London, like the West End and stuff. And then I've always, and even still now, I live commutable distance really. So but it was lovely.
Yeah, it's relaxed. Just yeah.
So
It's pampered in a hotel.
yeah, we stayed in the one that overlooks the London Eye.
Okay.
So it overlooks, so it wasn't the one that used to be City Hall, it was the one next to it, and it overlooks, so from our room we could see the Houses of Parliament and the Thames and the Eye, and
Oh, nice.
so yeah, it was lovely. So, and I went and saw the art, we went and saw the Art of Banksy exhibition, which was excellent.
Ah, where is it?
So you know Banksy, the
Yes.
graffiti art. Yeah, there's an exhibition on in Covent Garden.
Ah, in Covent Garden. Okay.
So yeah, so that was very interesting to sort of have a walk round and have a look at sort of how his career had developed and everything. So yeah, that was really good. And we went and saw the Eternals as well in Leicester Square. So,
You said that was good, yeah?
yes, it was very good. It was although they reference the other movies, it's very much a sort of standalone.
Yeah.
They vaguely mention various things about the other movies, but they don't, there's no character crossovers or anything like that. So and I mean, granted, they did do a big "the Eternals will be back" thing at the end, but they've left it in such a way that it can all kind of sort of carry on and develop more. So yeah. So how does everyone feel about their first poppy?
Still undecided.
Do you want to let me hold it a bit? I can't ever do this without. Oh, that looks lovely.
I'm fiddling, so I'm fine.
Yeah, so don't fiddle. Try and do it in as few strokes as you possibly can. Okay. Let's. No, yeah, I can't quite see, but what I can see looks good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice contrast on there. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, lovely. We're not trying to make these look realistic, so we're trying to make these look, you know, just have a bit of colour and a bit of texture to them, and let the brush strokes do the work for us, if that makes sense. So right, we're gonna have a crack at the next one. So this one, so what I want to say is don't get too hung up on, okay, so where's, you know, normally in painting classes, or where's the light coming from, where would the shadow be falling, and all that kind of stuff. Don't get too caught up in that. What you want to really focus on is that whole thing of which colours recede and which colours come forward. So we've got this paler colour here that we want that to be looking like it's coming towards us. Okay, so we are, yes, we have got our shadow under here, and we've got a bit of shadow in the center, but really don't get too hung up on, you know, like creating the perfect shadows and things like that, because we are simplifying this right down. And basically what you want to just get is this. The aim of this one is to get this petal here looking like it's closer to us than those on that side. Okay. So I'm going to give my, gosh, I get through so much tissue doing oil painting. I'm going to give my brush a good clean out. I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did before, which was to get a light covering of my oil paint on. What I would suggest doing with this particular one though is maybe creating a slight, just ever so slightly lighter tone. So maybe use your, if you used a Scarlet or whatever you used for here, for your first one, add a little bit of orange to this second base starting colour, just so you're not using exactly the same colours again. Okay, so if you make it a little bit more orangey, you're adding a bit more warmth to your red, and straight away you're creating this, you're making this one come towards you a little bit more. So I'm going to block in the back half of the of our poppy. I'm going to leave this front petal at the moment, and also the darker shadow ones. I'm just going to focus on getting that. And if you look at this, we've got two overlapping petals, so we're going to create our first petal with our base colour, and then we're going to add a little bit more of, you can add some more yellow, you could bring in a touch of white at this point, just to bring in this next petal that's overlapping that we want to have closer to us. So I've put in my petal shapes, but I'm gonna start to get in some of those kind of scalloped edges. I can bring in a little bit of my Elysium crimson, or your darker red that you've mixed down there at the base of that petal. You can pop in a little bit of it in those petals that you want to sit a little bit further back. And then pop in some little strokes that are going from that edge. I'm going to wipe out my brush again, And then I'm going to create that slightly lighter red for this petal here that's coming towards us. Don't be tempted to go too pale too quickly. Just going to tip my canvas on the side so that I can come round a bit. I'm just doing these little kind of like crooked, sort of like a little hook to the strokes that I'm doing. I'm not pressing down particularly hard, I'm pressing quite lightly, so I'm not pulling paint off. And then I'm gonna go up the other way with my base red to meet those petal shapes. Take my canvas again. And then in this bottom left-hand corner, I can start to bring in a little bit of my shade. Then I'm going to go back to my dark red and turn my brush on its side and just bring in some lines going out from the centre. Oh, need a bit more of that. I'm also going to just pop in that little bit of shadow lower down as well. Everyone doing okay? Yeah?
I'm a bit more comfortable with this one. I'm getting used to it a bit more.
Yeah. that's why I started off with that one up there, just to kind of help to hopefully loosen you up a bit. And so when I was doing my class, my teacher would show us pictures of sort of particularly Rembrandt, where you would look at his early work, which was amazing, but you would look at how like beautifully constructed and painted something like a hand was, and then you compare that to his later work, where literally this hand would have been painted and he might have painted it in 3 strokes rather than in like 103 strokes. And yeah, and it's just kind of getting to the point where you feel confident enough in what you're creating that you can do it in less. So this is a good exercise for that, to just get you to be a bit freer and a bit sort of not so tight, basically. So like I said, this is kind of, and I don't mean that, I'm not in any way putting them down, because they are, some of them are amazing, but you know when you go to a garden centre and you see the great big abstract flowers that are all kind of painted with a few paint strokes, and but yet it still looks amazing. So what I'm going to say to you guys is, what you might be looking at with this and picking holes in, the rest of us are going to look at and go, wow, look at those paint strokes, they look just like Poppies. Okay, so how you see everyone else's painting is going to be how everyone sees yours. Okay, so, and as well, this is one that will really work well from a distance. So, okay, we're going to have a go now at this kind of poppy that's coming, petal that's coming out towards us. So we want this to be paler. We want this to be warmer. So we're going to add a bit more, a little bit of white, a bit of an orange or yellow, whichever you've got. And we've got this funny kind of, it's kind of scoops up. We've got a little bit of a, almost like a hill, and then it's going to come down and scoop up again. Get the basic shape in, and then we're going to come back with a smaller brush and start to refine some of the details and stuff. So just get the basic kind of essence of it. You don't want it to be flat. You want it to have, none of this is flat. So you don't want a flat colour here. You want to kind of mix it up a little bit. So just keep remembering that if it's paler, it's going to come towards us. And if it's warmer, it's going to come towards us. This is a good kind of exercise in mixing lots of different tones and kind of really taking your time to get exactly what you want colour-wise. Okay, so I'm gonna come in. So we've got a little bit of kind of scalloping along this edge, so it doesn't matter if we pull up a little bit of our shadow as well. It's just giving us some more interesting tones. So this is my kind of palest colour. And then I'm going to go back to my mid-red, grab a bit of that on my brush, and then go back over. And you can keep doing that. You can keep just wiping your brush out, get the excess paint off. If it's got so thick that you can't really control it, you can take a bit off by tonking. I'm going to take a little bit of that colour up into my other petals, not masses, just tiny little highlights like that, so it all kind of ties in. So actually what I need to do is come across there like that. If you want to, you can take, so don't take pure white, we're going to save that for the last one, but if you want to create a really pale pink, you can do, and you can just give it a little bit of edging if you feel like you need it. When you are ready, rather than sitting and waiting for everyone to catch up, you can get started on your third poppy. I'll talk you guys through it again anyway. It's basically the same principle as we've done here for the other two. So it's the things that we want to come out towards us. We're going to have that bit more contrast, and they're going to be a bit lighter and a bit warmer. Those things that we want to kind of push away, we're going to add our darker red to. You can go even more contrasty on this one, because again, this one is closer to us, so you would have more contrast, and you would be a little bit paler as well. So this is one of those ones, honestly, once we put our greens and our blacks onto this, we'll totally transform our painting into something different. So yeah, so carry on with the second one if you're doing that. Move on to number 3 if you're ready to. Go at your own pace. There's no rush, of course. So I'm going to pop in a light coat of my sort of base red that I'm using. On this particular one, I want to try and keep that central bit there clear, so that I don't forget where it is. So I'm going to leave out the darkest areas again, just so that I know roughly what I'm kind of leaving myself to work with. I mean, normally if we were working in acrylics, we'd have probably put those stems in early on in our green and they would have dried by now, but we don't really want to sort of touch those at the moment, because we'd be doing this and picking up green and getting it all mixed in with our paint, which we don't particularly want. At the moment, we want to keep these colours really vibrant. So I've got this lighter section here that I'm going to pop in, and then so I'm leaving the sections that are going to be a lot darker, and also that central middle petal that's coming towards us. I'm going to leave that blank for now, and then I'm going to work my way through doing my highlights first, and then putting in my shadows. You can get lots of, you know, just different tones, and each time you sort of paint a bit, I'd be just tweaking the colour slightly and just getting lots of different shades and variations in there, and that's what's going to really make this nice and interesting. And just try to not fiddle too much with it. So So Nikki, did you enjoy your time in Buckinghamshire?
Yeah, it was lovely. We were absolutely shattered by the time we got home. We tried to just fit so much in.
You did the Wickham, the caves, didn't you?
We did, yeah, we really liked that. But we did walk up to the church, and we went to the cafe first, and they didn't have what we wanted, so we said we'd come back. So we decided we'd walk up to the church, but we didn't see the path.
Oh.
So Abigail's taking me through, like, oh yeah, let's just go up here, I can see it. So we were walking through the woods, and I was getting caught in bramble, and I was,
Oh no.
I'm going to fall down in a minute. Anyway, we got up to the top, and I was like, oh no, look, that's the way we should have come. But it was, yeah, it was fun. We really enjoyed it. We managed to get to the inner temple.
Oh right. Did you get to the River Styx?
Yes, we did.
Isn't that bizarre?
Oh, I couldn't believe it. It was an amazing place. We really liked it. And then we went to the Windsor Castle on Friday.
Oh, lovely. I still haven't been to Wickham House, so which is on the other side of the road from the caves, and we
saw that, we didn't go.
Yeah, it's meant to be absolutely stunning. I do keep meaning to go.
I was fascinated with the red kites as well.
Sorry, with the
red kites, the birds, they're everywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah. So my daughter's school, they have so many problems with the red kites that they're actually not allowed to eat outside.
Oh really?
Because the red kites come down and just take the food out of their hands.
Because we see a few buzzards around here, and that's what I thought they were to start off with. And then I thought, well, they're a lot closer than, you know, the buzzards we see are really high up. And then I realised what they were.
Yeah, they're terrible for taking stuff off of barbecues here, and
wow.
Yeah, they've kind of, everyone loves them, but they're just on that the verge of tipping over to being a nuisance.
They're a bit like our version of the seagulls, I reckon. We've got a lot of them around here.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
It's a lovely area. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's cool. So I've gone all the way round the outside. If anything, I've probably overworked some of that, and it's all started to sort of blend in. So I'm just as guilty as everyone else of over fiddling, but I'm gonna pop in my last petal, and this is the one where you can go sort of, what I would suggest doing is, just for your very last stroke on this, just add your little tiny white highlight along there. So, but I really wouldn't go any further than that with it. So I'm going to just get a nice clean edge on my brush, just pick up a little bit of white, and then I'm just going to basically dab quite loosely where I want the edge of this to go. I do a few dabs, and then give my brush a bit of a wash out, wipe out, should I say, because you'll start to pick up your other colours that are underneath. And you can put some little highlights on some of the kind of the other petals, but be very sparing with those. How's everyone doing?
Not bad.
I'm fine. I'm having fun. Not quite sure what's going to turn out like, but hey ho.
Well, we're going to turn these on their heads in a second. So we're gonna start to put in some of our green. So what has everyone got green paint wise?
I've got Viridian. I can't say it.
Viridian.
Viridian, thank you. Or
Yeah.
very bright. God, the light's so bad I can't see. Emerald.
Emerald. Okay. So neither of those are at all natural greens.
Yeah, I get Viridian too, and Emerald, and a mid green and a light green.
Okay. Cool.
I've got Hookers, Viridian, and Sap, and Emerald.
Okay. Right. So Hooker's green is traditionally a landscape green. That is, if ever you go off, you decide to go off and do landscaping, Hooker's green is a really good one for that. Also chromium oxide is a good one as well for using. They're quite they're kind of, I don't know if you can see that, but they're quite good, kind of realistic, you know, good for trees and things like that as a base colour, along with like your sap greens and things like that. What you want to do, so I'm going to go with, so I've got Viridian as well, she says, if she can get the top off. I've got a feeling this might be the one where the top's got stuck and I end up not being able to use it. I know, oh no, here we go. So I know one of my tubes of oils, and I can never remember which one it is totally and utterly jammed, and I can just never, ever open it. So I'm going to take some of my Viridian And I'm also going to take some yellow. And I'm going to work with just those two colours. So I've got any shade of yellow will do. That is fine. Give yourself probably twice as much yellow as you use of your Viridian, like on your palette. Viridian is like a really, really strong colour. And basically what we're going to do is use, you want a round brush, but you want a nice soft one. So yeah, you want to aim for a nice, whatever you've got that's a nice soft round brush. And I'm going to get sort of get any, if you've used it already, get any red paint out of it. We are actually going to use some of our red paint in our greens. So I don't know if you can see, but up here I've just rubbed some little bits of, and there, some little kind of, they're almost like reflections of the red from the poppies have come through onto our seed pods. So I'm going to take, just show you what I'm doing. I'm taking the tiniest bit of our Viridian. I'm going to mix it in to a bit of our green, and I'm going to start off by popping in. So I'm just going to go over our guide marks. There we go. I've used just the Viridian just so that it shows up a bit better on the screen. There. So we're going to pop in our stems. What you want to do is have it the sort of near the poppies, where they're going to be in shadow, underneath the poppies and things like that. They're going to be darker in shadow, and then you can use a bit of your yellow and just bring that through. And then just leave the top in shadow. And then we're using a soft brush, and we're going to do this in literally one stroke. You've got one shot with this. Okay, we're going to, you might want to use a tiny bit of a medium, a thinner or something, if I can get it open. So if you've got a little shot of linseed oil or terps, whatever you have to hand. Obviously, ideally you want a bit more of the linseed. So it is the tiniest, really, really sparing amount. You're going to load your brush right up with paint. And then basically for that little bit that we're going to paint onto our, onto the base here of our poppy, we are going to do one shot of this, one stroke, and then you're off. You're not even moving your brush. Okay. You can then bring your stem up to meet it, but you don't want to move that because you're just going to pull all your red paint. You could, if you need to do any more work, reload your brush, you can do it again, but try not to move that. Press your brush in sideways. That will give you the shape you want anyway, but it's just stopped you from like pulling all the red paint up. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing now with the rest of this, is putting placing paint on top of our wet paint rather than painting with it. So yeah, so you can then start to kind of come in, and it doesn't matter if you can still see some of your red marks coming through, it will help to make your your sort of colours more vibrant. So use a bit of green, a bit of yellow. If you find for your personal taste that your colours are too vibrant, just pick up a tiny spot of red and add to it, and that will take, a really tiny spot will just take the edge off. I'm going to use a little bit of red anyway. I'd personally use a separate brush for this. I'm going to sneeze, excuse me one second. Oh, yeah, and then so with a, you know, nice, really nice soft brush, I'm going to take a little bit of my red, very tiny amount. I'm just going to brush a few little, just a few touches. It's just to give us a bit of a reflection almost from our poppies. So, and then the top of the pod is almost like, it's like a daisy shape. So you're going to paint kind of like, almost like a daisy petals, but looking at it. So instead of it being daisy that way, you're kind of looking at it sideways on. So in the same way as we just pressed our brush into the bottom of our poppy, we're going to just press the brush in to form the top of our seed pod there. If you find anything like the edge of your pod is disappearing into your background, you can just pop a little edge of highlight onto there. How's everyone feeling about that? Is that starting to make our poppies make a bit more sense? They're not these just big red blobs anymore.
Yeah.
Have a look at it from a distance. That's what I would definitely say.
Yeah, no, I can see it. I think once we've got the little black thingy majiggers in as well.
Yeah, that's going to make a massive difference to these. So while you've got your green on as well on your soft brush, we've got a green pod in the middle here. So we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did up here, which is just to place our brush on. So we're going to paint black around it, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. And actually, when I've been sort of working on this, I found that you do get a bit of red kind of showing through. So it's up to you if you want to put a little bit of red up and run through that as well. I'm going to pop the centre of my other one in there.
Sorry, Tony, what color are you using for the center? Is the green?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, it's kind of, as I'm pulling off the brush, it's pulling up some of the red through it, and it's not at all flat. Let me see if I can get this close up to the camera so you can see what oh, that's a good example. It's pulling up some of the red and you're getting sort of textures and stuff through it. So, and if you want to, on the original, I've actually pulled some red paint through as well. So for this, the middle of the 3 pods, so I've basically done a darker pod and then the daisy shape on the top. I've done in exactly the same way, but I've just added some yellow and laid my brush on. So again, if you need to kind of sort of make your paint a little bit more fluid for the stems and stuff, you can do. But it's a really tiny, add a really, really tiny amount of medium. It's not like acrylic where it takes a lot to kind of make it more fluid. You only use very, very sparing amounts of it. So don't forget, if you need to sort of tone down your green, you can add a little bit of red to it just to kind of take the edge off, and it also gives you a nice kind of different tone rather than sort of straight out of the tube kind of greens. I'm just leaving little bits of my red sketch showing through as well. So this one I don't want too much in the way of highlights because I want that pod on the daisy shape on the top to really show up. So I'm going to start off by doing ones that are much more kind of straight across so that I get my angle, and then I can just place the rest of them on to get my shape. I wipe my brush out, and I can even go back with just some of the yellow just to really emphasize the ones that are closest to us. Give my brush a little bit of a wipe out, and I'm going to just put the little spot in the center of those. So we want this I want this one that's sort of at the bottom to come towards me more, so I'm going to make that one a little bit lighter than I have with the others. Give it a bit more contrast. And because this one is facing downwards, our sort of daisy would be darker because it's in shadow. And again, I can just wipe my brush out, go in with a little bit of the yellow. Also go in with a bit of the red as well. So I'm doing the stems in at the moment. I'm leaving some of the red showing. I'm kind of sort of sketching them in. I'm not worried about them being too solid or anything like that. I'm just using my sort of darker green to get them in. And then I'm going to come back over with my lighter green and just pop in. So if you've ended up with any that cross over, pick one of those and go over with your lighter colour so that you'll end up with that one looking like it's in front. Leave the other one dark and then pop in some colours at the bottom. How's everyone doing?
Okay, I think.
My stalks are a bit wobblier than yours.
I was thinking the same thing with mine.
They're not straight in real life, so that's fine.
Although I find it hard, I do like the oil paint. It's just got that flow to it, hasn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, so you can get what's called heavy body acrylic, which kind of reacts the same way as oils in that it, you know, it doesn't flatten as it dries, like you know, in this, like normal acrylics. Even if you've got a bit of texture in there, once as it dries, it will flatten a bit.
Yeah.
Whereas oils will stay. They might take 2 weeks to dry, but they'll stay.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, so that's, I've not really had a go with those. I was kind of thinking I might have a play. I've got an idea for a kids project that I might do with snowmen and do that in heavy bodied acrylic, or like Santa and then put the fur on Santa's hat in the heavy bodied acrylic, so it's got the texture. But yeah, there's something nice, and also you just get an intensity of colour with the oils and a richness.
Yeah.
You'll see this when it's dried, that I really like this, where I've done the background in the acrylic and it's gone very dry and it's dried and it's very flat and very crisp, but then it's got the sort of glossiness of the poppies on top. It's quite a nice kind of effect between the two.
Yeah, it gives there's different textures, isn't there? Or a lot of different textures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the light as well, like the brightness of the oil is not matched by anything. Like,
yeah.
such a nice.
It is nice, yes. So the next step after this is we're going to add our black. So what I would suggest doing is get your black in around on the centres of your poppies, and then go round, and so for example, any little areas that you want to have a really dark shadow, don't just use it just like we've done with the white, have very sparing tiny amounts of it. You can use your black with your darkest red colour. If you if you need to create like one shade darker, but yeah, I'd try put that black in first before you start to kind of go with the you know, like go with like putting big heavy shadowy lines around stuff. So I am just looking for my black. So for this, you want a soft brush. If you have got a really lovely soft lining brush, you can use that as well. So that's the long bristled ones. You don't need to. I am going to use a tiny bit of a medium, just to, my black is quite thick, so I'm just going to get it a little bit more workable. So I'm not kind of, otherwise it'd be a bit like sort of trying to layer chocolate on top of painting. And I'm going to start off by going around the outside of my pod. So if you're still painting your poppies or your stems or anything, just carry on. Don't sort of rush to catch up, and I can recap all of this. And then I'm just gonna pull little individual lines with my black, always kind of moving upwards away from that pod, but in the direction of the curve that we've painted in the that the petals is going.
It's a bit like almost doing eyelashes.
A bit, yeah. It's a bit like, and we're gonna, you want to sort of vary the lengths of them as well. So do a few and then go back, because you will start to pick up some of the red paint, and sort of just give your brush a bit of a wipe out and then reload.
I'm forgetting this is not acrylic. I'll just put my finger in the load of green.
Oh no. get the kind of main part of the black in, and then have a look at it from a distance, and you do find that you kind of get the in the middle of the black lines, kind of, if you imagine you took the petal off and it was kind of heart shaped, they are concentrated up and round into the middle. So have areas in the middle of where your petal would be that kind of come up further and then kind of go back down again. But then in amongst that, you've also got lines that are a lot longer. The temptation is to always put some on this front petal as well, but you're just going to kind of confuse the issue, and they, you know, that you wouldn't need to have it there. So I would avoid personally putting those on. I'm going to get the black on both of the flowers before I sort of have a look at the shadows on the petals, because I really don't want to put too much on. So once you've got those on, then just have a look at areas where you might have a little bit of shadow. You can just do sort of the very darkest point in the black. So for example, up here, you might want to just edge a tiny bit of a petal or something like that in it, but you wouldn't want any more than that. You can go back with a mixture of your black and your dark red and do some bits, but really don't be tempted to sort of start putting big black thick lines around stuff. So that's kind of literally all of the black that I'm going to use on that, and then I'm going to mix some of it with my dark red. Just to confuse myself, I put my black oil on with my black acrylic, and I've got to try and remember which one's which now. Just like with acrylics though, your black will just swamp any other colour that you mix it with, so do be aware of that if you are mixing up some red, some dark, like really dark red. So I've mixed myself a colour that's kind of somewhere between my darkest red and the black. And I'm just going to go round. I'm using my same lining brush. And I'm just going to... So we don't want too many details. We've just spent ages trying to paint things without too much detail. So fight the urge, guys. You can do the same thing with your palest colours as well if you want to. So not so much with your, try and avoid using your black and white if possible, and use kind of like a really pale pink or sort of orangey pink for your highlights, but you can just take a little just kind of, yeah, just pop in a little bit more, tidy edges up and things like that, but try not to lose the freedom that you've got with this. You also use your lining brush just if you've got, you know, any edges just with your sort of middle red that just need a little bit of tidying up and things like that. So So I'm going to do a little signature in the bottom right hand corner, and what I would personally do is really so really thin your paint down with a tiny brush, and I would just do some very abstract kind of a signature just to sort of tie in with like the rest of the painting. So I've done a T and an A on the bottom of mine that's in a square, just to kind of just tie in with the rest of the picture, that painting that I've done there. I feel like putting a red spot in there. Actually, I'm going to do that. I don't know why, but I just felt like doing it. So. Other things that you can do with this particular painting, if you want to, is obviously our poppies would have the, excuse me if I've forgotten my doing but like biology at school, but it's the stamens, isn't it? All the sort of fingery bits that go around, if I remember correctly. So if you want to, you can add those in. Personally, I would do those in, say, a green if I was going to do those. I liked the simplicity of this particular painting without them, but if you were tempted to do it, use a very small brush and you can just dot around. So I'm going to put some in my Viridian colour. You want a really small, soft brush. They're hardly showing up, but the texture of the dot is there. I can put some in, and that just gives you an idea of what I mean. So you want to have that, you don't want them all to be exactly the same colour, so you would have some that were more of the yellowy green as well. So, and I'm just going to pop a few in. So something to keep in mind as well is that they would come across in front of our central kind of seed pod area. So, is that whole kind of thing of, if you do this, you've got to try and make them look like they're randomly placed as well. So there we go. So that's something extra you can add onto it if you wanted to. I think what I'm going to do is I'll carry on with my guys who are painting live with me. I'm going to stop the recording now. So if you have been painting with me for the recording, I'd, as always, love to see how you've got on. If you've had any problems or struggled with anything, do let me know. Drop us a direct message through the Facebook page or through Eventbrite, or we've got the Artist Hangout group, which is super supportive, and it is there to give people feedback and help them with any problems. So yeah, so if you're doing the recording, I'm going to say bye now, and I'm going to switch over to my live painters and have a chat with them and see how they're all getting on. So thank you for painting with me tonight.